Maybe this is where we gotta get my jacket. Alright? Alright. Josh, ready?
Camera, we are rolling. We are live from OVO.
I was ever announced for the shir that the shir this evening is dedicated in honor of the staff of Yeshivat Hakotel. And we will Shmat, Rav Asher Michal Ben Tzvi, we will Shmat Rav Moshe and Chaim Eliezer, and we will Shmat Abraham Ben Nassan Halevi. Dr. Hashem, all the Shem should have no deal. And before I get started, so shir is not just a shir, it's a serious dedication here. It's a shir with dinner. In the spirit of Lag BaOmer, I'll say that reminds me of the story that I just went about Shomar Yochai. In the spirit of Lag BaOmer, Shomar Yochai, and Yerushalmi, over Shabbos, the Yerushalmi brings down the story of Shomar Yochai. Shomar Yochai was once sitting with his Talmidim, and he said to his Talmidim, listen, if I would have been at Har Sinai, I would have said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, just like you created me with 2 ears, and 2 eyes, and 2 hands, please create me with 2 mouths. So if you don't say, Rebbe, what's your chat? Why do you want 2 mouths? He says, Pasha, I always wanted to be learning Torah without having to ever take a break in learning Torah. We know we do kind of the mitzvah of learning Torah properly, right? We'll see ahead, you have to say the words in your mouth. And it says every once in a while you have to eat. When you eat, you have to stop saying the words of Torah. So this way you can have 2 mouths, 1 to eat, and 1 to learn Torah. You say the words of Torah. That's what he told them. The next day he comes back and he says, never mind. Zinu, why never mind? He says, I realized that even the 1 mouth that Hashem created us, we have such a hard time guarding our mouth from speaking Lashon Hara. And that's what would happen if Hashem created us with 2 mouths. We'll have to just deal with the 1 we have. But it doesn't change the ideal. I mean, as far as the Shomar Yochai is concerned, I deal with that 2 mouths. One you can always learn Torah, and the other you can eat. This evening, you'll all be zocheh in L'chaim, able to sit with the mouth and eat. The other hand, you're able to listen to Divrei Torah, hopefully participate a little bit also. Divrei Torah, Shomei Ka'oneh, at the same time, you're also being zocheh to learn Torah, and also being zocheh to eating the shot of meal. Thank you to the donors. I guess the question is, as far as I'm concerned, is whether there's a din of ro'eh ka'ochel. Did I learn Torah if I see other people eating? The mechanic is a dinner, but we'll leave that Akira for a different time. Okay, so let's get started. Everyone has the color sheets. If you'd like, I circulated some more sheets around you. You can figure out how to bring your own. Right now, we're in a time of the year where there's a lot of eggs. Right? Towards the end of the month of Iyar, towards the end of the counting of the Omer, final stretch, towards the very end of the year. Sad to think about it, but in 3 weeks from today, the whole majority will no longer be here in Yeshiva. On the other hand, this Shabbos, we also have a beginning. As we begin, Sefer Bamidbar. Sefer Bamidbar begins by Daber Hashem Moshe במעבר סיני בעוד מועד. באחד החודש השני, בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים לאמור, שאו את ראש מולדת בני ישראל ומשפחותם לבית אבותם. Go ahead and count all of the people, count all of Israel. The question is a little bit of a dry one. Right? It goes through all the lists, the Reuben and Shimon, goes through all the Shvatim and the numbers, and afterwards it goes to count the camps, and it counts them all again, and the total number of soldiers, and the sets of 3, and the total. And this isn't the first time we find Hashem counting with Israel, it's also not the last time. At the very, very beginning of the Sefer, the very first Rashi, so Rashi says, Shetzum Mitzrayim Manam, they left Mitzrayim, Hashem counts with Israel. Shenafulu be'egel manan, after Chegel counts them, they grab in Yan and turn to the Hamri left. Shabbat Short Shekhinah lehem manan, he wants the Shekhinah to come down to and he counts them again. Bechad Nisan Ucham Mishkan, the first of Nisan, Bechad Yar manan, he counts them again, beginning of the year. And they were, Pinchas, he counts them another time. So why the multiple counting? Rashi, Shemir, everyone's already there. It's the very first Rashi. Oh, that's already on Shemir. It says Rashi, no, Hashem loves us. Listen, Hashem loves us, right? Because we're so fun in Hashem's eyes, He counts us all the time. Hashem loves me. Why is it important for us to know? A, to know we have a Jewish Hashem that loves us. But it's also a lot of mindset for us. A mitzvah, right? To go in the direction of Hashem, to go to Hashem. Azal teaches us Mahu Rachum, Afatati Rachum. Just like Hashem has mercy, so too you should have mercy. Mahu Chanun, Afatati Chanun. If we continue on, just like Hashem loves me Israel, so too, we have a mitzvah. It's to love every Jew, and the mitzvah Hakotel, which is obviously a lot easier said than done. Something I think about a long time, if you talk to yourself, is Mechal possible. And we have to believe it is. There's no such thing as a mitzvah that God would expect us to do. That's not possible. On the other hand, could you really love another person to the same extent that you love yourself? Think about it. With the two clouds of Omer. And these are days that are tremendous days that we're going to take advantage of. Sfirat Omer, Lashon of Saphir, Sapphire, Sfirot. These are serious orot, the serious lights, the days that we have from Pesach leading up to Shavuot, getting ready for Matan Torah. The guys out there once saw an advertisement for a lecture that was taking place during this period, over 2 years back. And the sign said as follows: don't just count the days, make the days count. Right? Make sure to take full advantage. Not only for ourselves, but also the aspect of Avat Yisrael, of loving every Jew, is something that we have to do to retain the Achdus, the unity amongst Jews, not just for ourselves, but also the Shem Kol Yisrael, on behalf of all the Jewish people. Just like in the Mimuch that we say, 4 times in the Sfira home every night, I would say, Hashem, Mimuch HaTushim, people, the Yachai, right, the Shem, Kol Yisrael, then in Mimuch HaTushim, on the kind of says, the Shem Kol Yisrael. The topic of Shir, what I'd like to talk about this evening, is, I would say, the characteristic, the nature, the essence of this time period of the Sfira Omer, and try to really understand the depth of the bridge that begins with Pesach on one end and goes all the way and concludes and ends with Shavuot on the other end. That's just the nature of the calendar. And perhaps more importantly, Halach L'Maisa, to ask the question of what we need to do in terms of acting the bridge of where we are today. In terms of, as we know, B'ezrat Hashem, right, with the Hakotel the Gula, and what we need to do to bridge the gap to be able to get to the Gula Shlema and Hera in the Amen of Amen. Amen. Josh, you heard? The answer is Amen, right? Josh wants to make sure everyone participates in the share. Thank you. This Tkufa of the Divisivness Omer is very parallel to another time period, which we also commemorate, and we have Menhagim of the Bible, which is the Menhagim of the Bible of the 3 weeks of the Korban, also in terms of the halachot, as well as in the reason for the Bible. If you look at your first source, the Gemara in Yom Daf Tet Mudbet, everyone have a sheet? JJ have? There should be a pile, so we're going around there. Going around this way. So the Gemara there discusses Mikdash Shom Ma'acharav. Why was the first base of English destroyed? Everyone knows the Gemara. I go down the sheet. Right? 3 things that work. No, Avon Zara. Givarayas and Rishma Dam. I asked the Gemara, Mikdash Sheni, she was keeping Torah. Mitzvot Bin Chasadim. The second base of English, they learned Torah. They were all taking mitzvahs. They did mitzvahs Chasadim. They Ma'acharav. Why was it destroyed? Because of the hatred, the basis hatred between the Jews. To teach us, which they tell us that Sinat Chinam is so bad that it's equal to, kind of the same way as these 3. So that's as far as the Velos in 3 weeks, or starting from Zion leading up to What about the Avelos of the period of the Omer, which is perhaps the more common minhag is to include the Five Omer as we did last week, but those that have the minhag do the second half, those that even half year and Israel the minhag are doing both, not entire thing. What's the background? What's the reason that we have Avelos during this period of the year? Not a difficult question. What's the reason we have Avelos during this period of the year? Generally, go ahead. Avelos during the Omer. What? Good, David, Rabbi Akiva's students. Speaking of up, right? Because I enjoy your drink. No, David said, Rabbi Akiva's Sabina, right? So take a look at the Gemara in Yevamos. Daf Samach Ben Mubed, you have in source 4. Anu Shlema Sa'el, Zukim Tamadim Ayur Rabbi Akiva. Right? 12,000 sets, pairs of Tamidim of Rabbi Akiva. Right? So how many students? Maybe those who live in Advish. School for a month, we'll talk about this week. I don't want to pass. 24,000 students are on the Kiva. The Givata and Tifas, the Fulan Meitu Beperet Echad, they all died in one period. Remember that. Fulan Meitu Beperet Echad will come back to that. But they Shalom Nadu Kavod is everything. They didn't respect one another, they didn't cover one for the next. Vayal Lam Shamei Machavar Bekiva, that's what I'm saying. The world was desolate. So Bekiva came in terms of to the Rabbanim in the south. The Shanalam began to teach them. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rashi, or the Lazar of Shua. Names sound familiar? These are the pillars of Torah Shabbat. It's hard to find a Mishnah that's not calling one, it's not more than one of these tonight. The Hegmenu Torah Tashah, they reset up and rekindled the light and rebuilt the world of Torah. Says the Gemara, Tana Kula Meitim Pesach Maratzer. Remember, they all died at one time. You want to say they all died at Perak Echad? Here the Gemara gives us more details. They died from Pesach to Shavuot. Amar Kama Bar'aba Bitin Oti Bar'aba Kula Meitim Bitar Bar'ab. They didn't just stand down. They died a horrible, cruel death. And what was that horrible, cruel death? Ma'ini Amar Nachman Asker. They died from Asker. What's Asker?
Disease in the mouth.
The disease in the mouth. So Rashi says it's the B'nai Mayim. There's those that say that it's a din in strangulation. Right? There's those that say that it's a din that's connected to the mouth. The bottom line is that it seems to be some type of problem with breathing. Modern day Hebrew Askara is the diphtheria, which also is something that's an infection that blocks the airways and inhibits a person from being able to breathe and hopefully suffocate. Chas v'shalom, but ends in that. Suffocation without the ability to. So that's the Gemara in Riva. What question should anyone above the age of 7 or 8 ask themselves when they read this Gemara? And again, don't think of a complicated question. I'm talking about 7, 8-year-olds, a kid in Ghana, even less. What's the first thing a kid learns in Ghana that would be key? Stop a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid and say, "Have you heard of Rabbi Akiva? What do you know about Rabbi Akiva? What was Rabbi Akiva like? Especially this time of year. What do they can tell you about Rabbi Akiva?
Yeah, so
All types of songs, that?
yeah, so
Yes, correct. Do it after that. Imagine, right? Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva. Right? You walk into the yeshiva, and there's a pasuk in the entranceway, right in the shar. What pasuk's going to be there? You walk into the building, you walk there, it's Medrash, you look at the parochas and Aaron Kodesh, what pasuk's going to be in the parochas? You take out the stationery of the yeshiva, in the logo, what pasuk's across the top? As you saw with the Yeshiva Shtender, he had a pasuk on the Shtender, right? What's there? So Rebbeinu Shalom, I don't understand. We hear a story of Talmidim, of a great Rav, who didn't treat each other with respect, until the extent that Kashmir wipes down the plate. It's shocking that of all Rabbanim, the person that this happens to is Rabbi Akiva. I think Rabbi Akiva is Mr. Abbas Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva is Mr. Hakotel. How can it be that Rabbi Akiva is coming to listen to him? You can imagine that every other, Sichal, B'nyashal Torah, by Rosh Hashiva, on Tuesdays, at 1 o'clock, there's another Hakotel, right? Shir Kodesh, Hakotel, and that's the key topic, that's the hard issue. How can it be? How can it be? Is Talmidim going to listen to him? Is Talmidim going to learn from him? He said, Cloud Gadol Torah. Before you get right to the Torah and to Chumash and Rashi, right? Before you get to the Tzos and then the Tivos and you get to the Rambam and you get to the Shona and the Tivos and the Mishnah. The basics. After that, make a move. How can it be? No. What's the answer? What's the answer? How can it be that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim did not internalize the message of Hakotel to the extent so they're all white down in the place? What's the shot? Hey, I don't know what this guys know. That's why Noah still has Shabbat that he still internalizes the messages of the Holy Yeshivat. Go. What? So it's a question of the chicken and the egg. What do the measures tell us? Everyone see the measures from source 5? Again, source 2 and 3, you don't have to see inside. The Yushalmi, like the whole, everyone knows, right? Agav, Rabbi Akiva, does not appear anywhere in the Bible. You look at the Gemara in the Bible, it doesn't appear. It's interesting to note that it only appears in the Yushalmi. I think it's somewhat connected to the different styles. I don't hear one Yushalmi yet this year. One Yushalmi. The style of Yushalmi is very different than the style of the Bible. The Bible is always looking for flush on focuses and arguments and disconnections and disagreements. Where on the other hand, the Yushalmi is always trying to have harmony and to synthesize and bring things together. I don't know if you got a chance to keep it, they'll have the Yushalmi, but that's for a different time. Anyways, the Medrash, having source 5 in Bereshit Rabbah, Darshan Dal Apostle in Kohelet, Baboker Zarat Zarecha, Ule'erev Atzanach Yadech. He's literally as a farmer telling you in the morning, right, you should plant, you should sow the seeds in the ground. In the evening, you shouldn't hold your hands back. In other words, you should continue to do so. All the time, I understand this to be a metaphor. And they all give different perushim what it's talking about. So Eliezer of Yeshua, and first of Eliezer says, if you planted at the beginning of the season, right, if you plant at the beginning of the season, continue to plant at the end of the season, so you don't know which seeds are going to catch. So to cover your bases, it's worthwhile to do also in the beginning and also the end. And then he says, both of them catch, all of them. Rabbi Yeshua says, if a poor man comes to you with chakras in the morning, give him stuff. But Arabic comes in the evening, give him as well. Why? You don't know which one you're going to get more reward for, which one's going to make more of an impact, more of a difference, which Hashem's going to give you more credit for. Both of them together, all the more. Then Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says if you learn Torah, but if you learn Torah when you're a young man, continue to learn as you get older, right? Not chas v'shalom to think, right? That if you're a young guy in yeshiva, you learn Torah, wants to leave yeshiva, keep learning as you get old. Which one's going to stick with you? All this is introduction to Rabbi Akiva. Says Rabbi Akiva, what happened in the middle of Bereshit Rabbah? Verse 5. Rabbi Akiva Omer, if you had Talmidim when you were younger, make sure to continue to have new Talmidim as you get older. You don't know which ones are going to stick. Zeh or Zeh. And if both of them, all the more so. And then the Medrash tells us the story. Right? The Medrash tells us the story that we just saw on the Gemara Yevamot. More or less the same thing. Yud Belal Talmidim, I will Rabbi Akiva, not the large repass. The Chulam Perach, make those slight differences. So they all died in one period. Lama Shaitan Sarai Elu. Not Lashon, not that they didn't have cover of one another, but their eyes were very impacted on one another. So it was so to reach Shiv'ah. In the end, he ends up having 7 Talmidim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shemar, Rabbi Yochanan Sanblat, Rabbi Elazar, Ben Yaakov. Those that say Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shrashmi, Rabbi Chanina ben Chachmiyai, Rabbi Yochanan Sanblat. And this is the key one. Says Rabbi Akiva to this new group of Talmidim. Amar lahem. Says, Banai, Arishonim lo meitu ela shaitan ehem tzara elu la'elu. Says, my first set of Talmidim, which weren't 7. Here it says 12,000, the Gemara 12,000 pairs, 24,000. They died, why? Because of this issue. That they were not for one another, they didn't cover for one another. Make sure to be makbid that you shouldn't do like they do. Make sure that you don't fall in the same pitfall that they did. And then, says the Medrash, I'm doing Maluk al-Aretz, Torah, they go ahead and they fill the entire world with Torah, etc., etc. Everyone lives happily ever after. And Baruch Hashem, we have Torah on that from their teachings and their Talmidim teachings and so forth. So what do we see? That's a chicken and egg. When does Rabbi Akiva become Mr. V'Adorecha Kamocha? When does Rabbi Akiva say V'Adorecha Kamocha Zeh Klal Gadol B'Torah? Only after the whole story. Everybody else in the Medrash of his students who are dying out in a plague because of what they did. So that's obviously the most basic level, most basic lesson that has to be learned from the story of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. And we have to make sure that we're no kavod. The union of Ahavas Yisrael, Achas, loving fellow Jews, not being judgmental, attacking fellow Jews. That's the most basic. For Shulchan, I want to go ahead and move to the second story. And go to another way. I have to start with a question which seems to be somewhat of a technicality, but a very, very acute historical fact. But through that question, I think there's a lot to discuss. The question is, what did the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva die from? You guys saw the sources. Together with your parents, right? No. What did the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva die from? What is asking? Suffocation, or it's another possibility. Yeah. That's the reason Hashem punished them. The question is, what did they actually? What killed them? Hashem wiped them out. So what actually killed them?
War.
So if you look at what do you say?
War.
War. You know why do you say war?
I heard that they were killed in Bezar.
In the Makos. Shmad. That's the Shmad. Lisa, what do you say, Shmad?
I actually didn't know the word meant, so I asked it is when Jews were killed by Christians.
It was a persecution, started before that, and by the Romans, it was a persecution of the Bible. It's even the flyer for the Shir. Yeah, no, it's a question of the flyer. Yigeres or Shiragon, source 6. We got it? Everyone familiar with the Ger of Shiragon? First, let's start with Shiragon. Who's of Shiragon? What was the period of the Gaonim? Let's keep looking back so we see some faces that look like they know what I'm talking about. When did the Gaonim live? Not talking about the Vilna Gaon. Before the Rishon, right? We have the Tanaim, then Amorai, then excellent, that's all right, but those are not all put on the side for now. And then we have the Gaonim before the Rishon. Some of the more familiar Gaonim, you guys know their own names, Gaonim or no? Sadagon, Haigon, etc. And Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah was asked the question about the development of Torah Shabbat. How was it the Torah, how exactly developed from Moshe ben Sinai until our times? Also about Machlokas, everything came from Moshe Rabbeinu from Sinai, why is it Machlokas? And Rosh Hashanah writes a response in the letter, which became very, very famous, which goes ahead and gives the history of Torah Shabbat and Jewish history from back in the coast till this time. And he goes and quickly summarizes. So I didn't bring you the whole letter. Save some time. But I do want to relate to the one line or two that he relates to the story of Rabbi Akiva. So if you look at source 6. Then Rabbi Akiva, Talmidim Arbei, and many students, Vayash Shmada al Talmidim Rabbi Akiva. So there was persecutions, they were persecuted and wiped out by the Romans. And he goes on, this is the story of the Yeshivat as it said. And here we have the question, Stira. What killed them? Yitzchak Justin is right. Right? Jordan. Yitzchak's right? Why did they die? It's not punishment. But what did they die from? So here it says they died from Shmada. But we saw that the Gemara in Yevamot says that they died from Askin. Any suggestions? Question clear? Stump the stars? No suggestions? 2 stages. Go ahead. So 7, that's 2 stages, or 7 and 7. And because Baruch did decide to wait them all for one thing, it's kind of you got to pick your poison. You know, it's like you want the ice cream shop, chocolate or vanilla. They each one of the you got a choice. Some askara, some shmatu. Okay. Other suggestions?
Maybe sort of building on what Nathan was saying, that like someone to like show them that they're doing something wrong. So first
Okay.
transfer, and then once they did.
Say one was one thing, and then it's not ask the Gemara goes out and says ask is a really evil. Right? It says a bitara.
It's like
Very
it's not
cool,
natural.
difficult punishment, maybe the other way around. But okay, so that one's worse than the other, so it came in stages. I didn't put it on the color sheet, maybe I should have. There's a very important Rambam that relates to Rabbi Yeshiva. The Rambam in the very end of the Mishnah Torah, and Hilchot Malach and Parak Aleph, discusses the halachas of the Mashiach. And he says, one of the things he says about the Mashiach, I'm reading from Hilchot Malachim, Parak Aleph, the Halacha Gimel. Says the Rambam, Al Yalel Dachash and Melech Mashiach Tzarich Lasot Ochot Muftim, Umechadesh Dvarim Ba'olam, O Mechayem Mektiv Chayot Zedum Elam. He says, don't make the mistake to think that the Melech Mashiach has to give all kinds of signs and otot and muftim and miracles, or make some kind of chiddush in this world, or bring people back to life. He says, that's not in our religion. Doesn't make the cut. We don't believe in that. And here he brings an historical proof. What's the historical proof that the Rambam brings that the Melech Mashiach doesn't have to have any proof that he's the Mashiach? He doesn't have proof. We're not into what he doesn't even have. But he doesn't even have any kind of miraculous signs. Sharei Rabbi Akiva Chacham Gadol B'Chochmei Mishnah. Says the Rambam, Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest Gadol in the Mishnah. V'dimahu Hu Haya Nosei Kelav Shel Ben Koziva HaMelech. He was the arms carrier of Ben Koziva. Who is Ben Koziva? Bar Kochba. That's what it means. He was the Shamish of Bar Kochba. He was the Chassid of Bar Kochba. Rabbi Akiva believed that Bar Kochba was the Melech HaMashiach. Not only was it Rabbi Akiva, and all the Torah in generation believed that Bar Kochba was the Melech HaMashiach. Until he died, they thought he was the Mashiach. Once he died, they're like, oh, I guess we were wrong. He wasn't the Mashiach. He wasn't the Mashiach. They wouldn't know. He wouldn't have been killed. He wouldn't let us know. Holding the base of Midrash, right? So, must be not the Mashiach. And here's the Rambam's raya. The Chachamim didn't know. Why did they not know until retroactively after he died? Because they didn't ask for any sign from him. Here the Rambam proves that the Melech HaMashiach does not need to have any otot. But as far as what's important to us from the story, Bar Kochba, Rabbi Akiva, was a supporter of Bar Kochba. What does it mean that Rabbi Akiva supported Bar Kochba? What's Pshat around? How do you understand around? That he was a Shamash of Bar Kochba, that he supported Bar Kochba, that he and the other Dom at the time all thought that Bar Kochba was the Mashiach. What does that mean on a practical level? Maybe they gave him a skava, right? Not like the restaurant that lost their $2. They had a $2, right? From sign Rabbi Akiva and all the golden, right? Sign. Good advertisement. Sign, right? Rabbi Akiva and all of the gedolim. $2 kashrut melech HaMashiach l'hajim l'mahajim. They gave him support. There was a Yid, famous Yid, named Yosef ben Mattatyahu. Familiar? Yosef ben Mattatyahu. You might know better by his Roman name, Josephus. Familiar? No. So Yosef ben Mattatyahu, we know, went over to the side of the Romans, Jewish historian, wrote the history, and writing the history of the Jews. He also recounts the story of everything happened from the Rabbi. Writes Joseph that Rabbi Akiva's support of Bar Kochba included sending his Talmidim to join the army of Bar Kochba to fight in the army of Bar Kochba in rebellion against the Romans. So how can we use that to answer a stealer? How can we use that to answer a stealer? You'd say that the Romans suffocated. Then they would also be killed by the Romans. And can anyone bring historical evidence? The fact that the Romans suffocated the soldiers of Bar Kochba, which according to Josephus, very probable That could be an understanding of Ram with Talmud or Yeshivat. Someone else involved here? No? So we'll ask him. Chibur Mitzvah a little bit more.
They have to have another caves on the third mountains.
Let's take a step back. Right? What was the only, ask who's right. Just give you an introduction, I'll let you take over. What was the only shooting chance that, right, that the armies of Claudius had against the Romans? You know, Roman army was the most well-oiled, run machine and military in the world. Quantitatively, qualitative, state-of-the-art equipment. What are the chances of a bunch of, Jewish soldiers going to go out and fight against them? What was the only advantage that we had?
Shem.
I'll be deaf, Temba.
It's our land.
Home court advantage, right? Think about it. It was their terrain. They knew the grounds. And what did they do? Guerrilla warfare. They held out in the caves. They came out at night. They attacked. Now, for the Romans, this is very good. Because if they wanted to go out and try to stamp out and attack the soldiers, it's a big risk. Why? Because if they enter into the caves, what might happen to them? Right? Not like nowadays they have intelligence where they have all the court, the prints and everything, and they know exactly all the turns. They're walking into a cave. They don't know where the turn is, where the secret chamber is, where someone might be coming down from above, from below. They're on a knife, they're throwing torches. They don't know. The Romans were bright. They said, listen, if we go in there, we're going to keep getting killed. It's not the way to go. We have a much better method of squashing the surveillance. So, they locked up all the entrances to the caves. They plugged all the holes from above, aside for one, and then they lit all kinds of herbs and leaves and things on fire, threw it in, right, to make like a smoke bomb. And then what would happen? It would smoke out the inside of the caves, and then everyone would suffocate. Their lungs would collapse, something very similar to the way that we understood Askara. So what did they die from? Askara. What did they die from? Shmata. Meaning, was it the Romans doing it, or was it the Ziza Hashem designed for to do it? Yeah, it's like we've been talking about all year. There's a Yid, that's a Ma'min. A believer has to always look at the world from at least two perspectives. There's always going to be natural explanations of how things can be developed and explained in the world. There's always a religious perspective, understanding how things are done. Right? So because that's what Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is up above and is Hashgacha Pratis, and he's behind the scenes, leading things along the way that he wants to go. How to come? Answer number one to this. Answer number two is something that I saw in a footnote approximately 5-6 years ago. And to this day, I'm blown away by the shot. Now I'm just blown away by the shot. I don't even know what caught my eye. Someone was asking me a question. They showed me something in a sefer of Rav Melamed on Sfira Omer. It's on my eye, just at the bottom of the page with a footnote. And there he brings, he doesn't quote the name anyway. He says, Shamati. I heard of a pshat. And it's mamish as if it was written in reality nowadays. Here's the pshat. So what pshat the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva lo nahadu kavod zeh b'zeh? What's pshat? So the Bible doesn't say it's his own pshat. It says you heard. What's a pshat? Put yourself back a couple thousand years ago, sitting in the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva. Okay? Before they put on a logo and on the front door and on the baroque. You're there. Right now, there are fierce battles, persecution by the Romans. There are Jews as Bar Kokhba out there trying to make a stand and trying to fight, etc. And right now, it's clear to everyone we have to do whatever we can to save the Jewish people. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? So, there are two different camps. There are those that say, what do we need to do? It's time to close this fire. Bezrat Hashem will come back to the Beis Medrash and Shir Dal, right? But for now, it's time to close this fire and go out to the battlefield, put on a uniform, take arms, and defend the Jewish people. They go out and fight to save Am Yisrael. You're in Eretz Yisrael. That was one camp. What was the other camp? What was the other camp? One is Klaus Talmid to be saved by Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Torah, 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 and then Torah. Basmada. We got to intensify our learning. We got to learn more quantitatively, qualitatively. We have to have all-night mishmars. We have to make sure that at all night long, there's learning around the basement, sleep in shifts. We have to intensify from so the more we learn, the more siyat mishmar we'll have. Okay, two different camps. And Adkan, everything will be fine. What was the problem? What was the problem? Lo nahagu avot zeh. This camp didn't have any respect for this camp, and this camp didn't have any respect for this camp. The Lamdanim that wanted to learn all day and night and all day and all night long to help Klal Yisrael's cause, how did they look at those that clothed their strength to pick up weapons and fight? Like a bunch of Batalim. It's Bittul Torah. Now he's a Bittul Torah. Where's your Amunah? Don't you have Amunah? If you go to the Torah, Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to help you. And they, Hasnish, they're not really stark, they're not the real deal. When the going gets tough, the tough get going, and these guys just kind of like jump ship, and they're not really what a real Talmud of Rabbi Akiva should be like. They're not the real camp. On the other hand, the camp that went out to battle, picked up weapons. What do they say about others that sat in base should continue learning and all they want to do is learn? What a bunch of bums. They're so selfish. Right now, all the Jewish people have to defend themselves. Right? What type of parasites that want to live off of other people's efforts? They don't want to risk themselves or other people going out there to the battlefield to risk their lives for them. Torah words are very important. It's a time and place for everything. And right now is the time to go ahead and take action. Ain't something else. What kind of crooked amulas in there? What kind of crooked stuff do they have? Do they think that Kodesh Baruch Hu is just going to go ahead, okay, knight in shining armor and say, you have to have the shadows, you have to try. Below nahagu kavod zeh, what's that? Allah comes to Kodesh Baruch Hu and says, if you don't have respect for them, and they don't have respect for you, you know what I say? That's the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I don't need you, and I don't need you. Wipe out all 24,000 Talmidim, and have to start building the world of Torah from scratch. And how do they die? That's the pshat. Wow, right? That's the pshat that it brings down on the Kurah, but you heard of it. How does that solve the steal? Because they died in both. But that is a choice. Those that went out to the battlefield, shmad. Those that sat back, killed the safe base Erish, Hashem brought upon them the disease of Askara, and they died as well. Just so there's a tremendous share here of what it means when we talk about it's not just an in of derech eretz, of loving other Jews, getting along with other Jews and they don't want to compare it. But it also means respecting other Jews, even if they have different opinions than we have. Just because someone thinks differently than you, someone has a different hashkafa than you, we think you should sit alone for 10 years, and he thinks you should go to the army, whatever. You have to respect one another. Even if the hashkafa is the exact opposite of one another. And that's something that can be learned from the story of the Talmid Rabbi. Second story. Let's go on. The third level. The third level is not just the Haflarech Kamocha and the Achtos and the mutual respect on a level of Be'an L'Chavero, but it also gets into Hashkaf itself of Be'an L'Chavero. Hashkaf is an in of Achtos of Be'an L'Chavero. But there's also an in of Achtos of Hashkaf Be'an L'Chavero. This is something that we discussed at length. Most of you were there on the Erev Yom HaZikaron. We spoke of the different halves. Remember, we had our characters. We had Dudu. Remember Dudu? The tractor out in the field. That was Mamish Moser Nefesh for Eretz Yisrael, building up the country, and that was his thing. But that was it. And then we had, right, Shraga Bible Zufir. Shraga Bible Zufir. Steigen, learning Torah and mitzvos, and he was makbid in every single halacha, kala, kichabura, and down with kavana, with the minyan, and everything, every single katan and Mishnah Berurah. And those are two extreme polar We discussed about that. We discussed that we believe that the full picture isn't a doo-doo. And it isn't try to have a zukmir, but to you. Instead of able to encompass both of those sides, both the Mesiras Nefesh for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and carrying out the Jewish people and involvement in the Jewish people, on one hand. On the other hand, not any less serious in commitment to Torah and mitzvahs, etc., as the model of Shraga Chayil. I don't know if I mentioned it then. I once had a teacher in Tanakh that said that there are some people out there that think that the way that we win battles or win wars is through tilim, through using missiles. And those that think that the way to win wars is through tilim, right? Saying Tehillim. We believe you need not tilim by itself, and not tilim by itself, but tilim and tilim, and that's how we win. Looking back to the Hakotel sheets, we go back to the Shitas of Chazal. Remember, we opened up with the Gemara in Yoma, why the basic image was destroyed. There's a little bit of a different take in the Gemara in Yerushalmi and Chagiga. You have it in source 7. You don't have it? Source 7? Yerushalmi says, Tani of Shum ben Yochai. We're still in the week of Lagom. Rash. In Ra'it Ayarot Shel Shum Koman Eretz Yisrael Dash or Ziku B'Schar Sofrim. Mushan. If you see places in Eretz Yisrael that were uprooted, communities that were destroyed, you should know the reason is because they didn't hold on. They didn't hold on to Malamdim. They didn't hold on to Rabbeim, to teach the Torah to the children. How do I know? My time. Amad da'aretz nastak midban bli ava ever v'yom Hashem al zatan et Torah. Hashem says because they left my Torah. Now that could be true for the first base image. What about the second base image? Everyone remember what the Gemara in Yoma said? The Gemara in Yoma said 3 things. The first thing was why the first base image was destroyed, which was PRS. The third thing the Gemara says is why the second base image was destroyed, which was, what does it say in the middle? What did look back in the Gemara in Yoma? What does the Gemara say in the middle? In between why it says why the first base image was destroyed, why the second base image was destroyed. It says, very nice in the first base image, the second base image was it went up. So this Yerushalmi is not going to explain to me nowadays if I see cities that are desolate. No. That we can the first place, not the second place. Perhaps we can understand better based on the Gemara above the Metzia, not Peheg. Develop the Gemara. We don't have it? Source 8. The Gemara above Metzia. Always get one from someone. You have it in front of you. Amar Yud Amar Amai Dechtiv Mi Ayisha Chachami V'Et Zod Asher Diber Ki Hashem Elav V'Yekil Al Ha'Daretz. Says Rav Yehuda Rav, who can tell us what's the pasuk? Who's a wise man that understands why it is that Hashem destroyed the land? The Varzeh. I'm going to ask the Chachamim, why did Hashem destroy Eretz Yisrael and send us into Galus? What did the Chachamim answer? I don't know. Open. Amru Nevi'im. So I went to the Nevi'im and said, why did Hashem destroy the Eretz? What's the answer? Lo Yeshua. Hashem himself. The Chvod of the will give the answer. They left the Torah. But wait a second. We just saw the Gemara in Yoma. Then in the second place, they didn't learn the Torah. And here we have a Memra of Rav Yehuda and Rav that seems a tad bit extreme. Amar Rav Yehuda and Rav Shelo Yirchu B'Torah Tchila. What does it mean? They didn't say Let's make sure that we get this right. Why did Hashem appoint this Gemara, destroy Eretz Yisrael, and send Bnei Yisrael to Galus? 2,000 years. Not because they didn't learn Torah. They learned Torah. Because they didn't say Birchas. They didn't say Birchas Torah. What? They didn't say Birchas Hamazon. Hashot, that's important to say Birchas Hamazon. Everyone knows, right? Every mitzvah, every bracha. But Chaviyah, at face value, doesn't it seem like just a tad a bit overreaction on the Kodesh Baruch Hu's part to wipe out Eretz Yisrael, send the Jewish people to God because they didn't say Birchas Hamazon? Extreme reaction, no? What's the pshat? So listen to the pshat. Listen to the pshat of the Rav. The Kutzasal says, look at Birchas Torah. What do we say in Birchas Torah? No? In case you forgot, you have it in your sheet. Everyone knows, right? What's Birchas Torah? There's two things we say in Birchas Torah. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, which means Hashem chose us from all of the nations, and then v'natan lanu et Torato, and He gave us His Torah. It says you cannot you can't disconnect one from the other. You cannot disconnect the Torah from Am Yisrael. Shavuos is coming up less than 2 weeks away. The Torah was not given to any individual. No matter how big of a tzaddik, no matter how big of a gadol, even Moshe Rabbeinu was only given the Torah as a representative of Israel. The Torah was not given to an individual. The Torah was given to Klal Yisrael, and each and every one of our rights in the Torah, our schus in the Torah, our connection to Torah, emanates from the fact that we're part of the Jewish people. From Klal Yisrael. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. Someone that doesn't recognize that, someone that words Torah in Exile and Amos is disconnected from the appreciation and understanding that their connection to Torah comes from the fact that Hashem chose us as an Am. Their learning of Torah is Zelozeh. That's not right. That's not it. Doesn't fit the bill. So it says or quote, not making a bracha on Birchas Torah is indicative of a much, much, much deeper problem. They don't understand what they're doing. It's not Talmud Torah. So, what happens to Sefer Shemot? The beginning of the Sefer is the slavery, Shemot Be'era. Then we have Yetziat Mitzrayim, Hashem choosing us as an Am. And then right away we go into Yitro Mishpatim. Right? Kabbalah Satara. But it's one that precedes. You can't disconnect. Which brings us back to what we're talking about. That the Torah and Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael are two sides of one coin. They're not two separate things. Someone that has mamish filled with Torah, mamish full of svarim of Torah, Gevalas. But it's still only half the cup. Half the cup's full, but half the cup's empty. And someone that's mamish Moser Nefesh, Am Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael, and they're Klal Yisrael kind of Yid. That's amazing. It's Gevaldik. But it's only half the cup that's full. The other half of the cup is empty. We need both halves of the cup. We need both sides of the coin. We need the Tilin and we need the Tilin. We need Achtos, coming back to our third level. We need Achtos not only in Al Chavero, but we also need Achtos in Hashkach. In Al Lamach. Achtos in Hashkach. A question. Did somebody really keep or punish why? Lo nagum, kavod zevazim. Right? Now the Gemara was added this way, and so does all the Makom to say that they died at a very specific time period in the year. Why is that relevant to the story? And why did it happen that? Meaning, do we think that they were tzaddikim, they got along great for all of El Zman, all of Khorasan? They were best buds, right? They got along great. It was amazing. And then all of a sudden they come back from his mind, and boom. Lo nagu kavod zeh. The ayin was Sarah Chad L'Sheni from Pesach to Shavuos was horrible. Then after Shavuos, they were best friends again. There was a Kayet Zman, for El Zman, for Khorasan. Come again, Pesach. Machlokas in the Sinum. So Hashem said, oh, you're you're only fighting always in this time period, so the punishment is not going to come true best on Shavuos. Could that be shot? Not likely, right? It's likely, is it that there was a problem with Lodam and who comes with the Imagine Hashem, Rachel Mechanov, right? Hashem gave them a chance to do tshuva, and it was for a longer period that they had this problem. But first comes the Shav, and not close the tshuva, not close the tshuva, Hashem says, okay, ain't my I have to wipe them out. But that means that Hashem chose this time period with after. The question is why? Based on the pshat that we just discussed, of the achos, of Hashem Bachar Banu Mikol Alim, and Tanah Torah. So it makes sense that it should be specifically during this period. And let's understand, it's part of the nature of this period, the Sfirah Omer, between Pesach and Shavuot. So what's Sfirah Omer? Sfirah Omer connects between Pesach and Shavuot. What's Pesach? Hashem Bachar Banu Mikol Alim. That's what Hashem chose us as a nation. What's Shavuot? Perhaps it's the depth of the Shita of the Bahag. What does the Bahag call about Sfirah Omer? It's one big mitzvah. And if you miss one night, you're out. Allah Khamais, we don't pass night to the Bahag, right? Even if you miss a night, you have to count over every single night. We're choshes. But she's like, Bahag, stuff like that, I'll take a bro. The end is what forgot to count, plus the count of the it's a mitzvah. But according to the Bahag, it's not a mitzvah. You missed it. Why? Because the Bahag says it's one mitzvah. One might be the depth. Hashkafically, the time of the mitzvah, the Bahag, why it's one mitzvah? Because you need a connection between Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Alim and Tanah Torah. Once you miss one night, there's a disconnection in the chain. It's like why Hashem destroyed the earth according to the Gemara Bava Metzia and the Yeshivat Chagigah. You have a disconnect between the Torah and Eretz Yisrael. And Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem. In our generation, we will also look to two parallel chagim, just like Pesach and Shavuot. Which chag do we celebrate a little more than 2 weeks ago? Not that long after Pesach, at the beginning of the period of Sfirah Omer. Yom HaTzmaut. And what's the nature of Yom HaTzmaut? Yom HaTzmaut, right, is a national holiday. Yom HaTzmaut is our independence. Baruch Hashem. Divisivness. The matana that we have from Shemayim, from Yisrael. So that's the national thing. Similar to Pesach, and that's what's on that end of the Sfirah Omer. And B'ezrat Hashem, less than a week away, what chag do we have? Yom Yerushalayim. It's coming back to Yerushalayim. Right? Hebron, it's Elul for Shabbos. Up to the Hakotel, we got to Har HaBayit, but we're still not. Say now, I'm listening. I'm sure you guys heard over the year the boards, right? About the Har HaBayit B'Yadenu. Up to the Hakotel, Hashem gave us for free. We want the Beis Hamikdash, Har HaBayit B'Yadenu. It's up to us. The religious concept of Yom Yerushalayim, and it's not by chance that Yom Yerushalayim is celebrated not to the same extent nationally as Yom HaTzmaut. For those that say that the complete goal will come, right, when Yom HaTzmaut comes to the Hakotel, when Yom Yerushalayim comes to Tel Aviv, we need to get everything together. So those two ends of Yom HaTzmaut, the more the national holiday, paired with Pesach, and Yom Yerushalayim, the more religious nature holiday, paired with Shavuot, is again the connection between Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and the connection of the Torah in our generation as well. In terms of the Har HaBayit B'Yadenu, what we can do, I'm not going to go over everything we spoke about in Yom HaZikaron, but the bottom line we says that it's totally on us. Remember of Tzvi Yehuda, when I cook at 10 taftichul, it's up to you. You have to be 100% real, genuine, the full deal, in terms of the achdos, in terms of bringing the gula, both in terms of the Am Yisrael, 100%, stark, and that's a chovah, it's an obligation, it's also a soul. But I want to emphasize, chas v'shalom, with all the discussion of the third level of the achdos of the hashkafa, to forget that it comes in the basic package of the most basic level, which is the ikar. The ikar is Avos Yisrael. It's to love every single Jew. to treat every single Jew with respect, even if I do not agree with him hashkafically. And ironically, sometimes hashkafically, there's a danger that we're going to have to be the ones that have the most disrespect for the rest of the class, all right? Because if we're sitting pretty in the middle of the full class, the full package, Jews that synthesize the dudus of the world, right? The Shraga of the world together. So we can look down on the dudus, because they're only dudus and not Shraga. And we can look down at the Shraga because it's only Shraga and not dudus. And we're amazing. We're the best. The few, the proud, right? We're the full package. So we can result on the rest of Chayesel. Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. We have to have respect for all Jews. Include the story. The Imam Banu Smecham brings a story of the early Belzerav, Rabbi Abel. Maybe you should get a little bit of appreciation of who the Belzerav is. The Belzerav didn't get that to Israel. So one chassid came into him and started talking to him about we call nowadays the Chilon. Back then, that's what they call them the Chofshir, free ones. They free themselves of it. So he was talking a little bit Zilzul, the Chofshir. The Rebbe, the Belzer Rebbe, smacked him across the face and said to him, "Get out of my face. I don't want to see you when you spoke about another Jew that way until you go to the mikvah, go tovel the mikvah and come back." That's what the obviously saw. Anyway, the Belzer Rebbe was in that generation, or back in 1914, the beginning of the outbreaking of World War I in Europe. And he was accepted now as one of the Gedolei Ador, not just in this time, but also Nigla, all the Gedolei at the time. And at the time he was in Hungary, there was persecution, he ran. It's a long story, it brings there of Heidelbaum, I don't remember the first name, maybe Michal David, I'm not sure. It was a grandson of a previous Satmar, when I was named Heidelbaum, Satmar. And in telling the story, so Hakotel says that I was there at the time, I was a young kid, and I was like almost a dead vice at the bells of the derby. And this Avrech came, I saw one day, and he was standing there talking with fervor, with emotion, and it was created a whole crowd. There's commotion going on in the streets. And people were coming, I heard him talking, more people were coming, more people were coming, more people were coming. There were crowds, hundreds of thousands of people standing around. What was going on? What was so hot? What was the issue? This Avrech, this Kolo guy, so Teitelbaum, was coming to the Belzer. He says, "Listen, right now the Jewish people are being persecuted. There's no time like now that we need the Gula. And what do we need for the Gula to happen? We need the Jewish people to be closer to Tshuva, to start keeping Torah the way it needs to be kept." Says this Avrech to the Belzer Rebbe, "There's no one like you that can unify all the Golam of Klal Yisrael. If you will go ahead and say, I'm starting a tshuva movement, and Yichol Machzir, all Chayos on tshuva, so all the other Rabbanim will join on, all the Golam will join on, and slowly but surely will bear like, and we'll get all the people to tshuva, the Mashiach will come, Shalom Yisrael." And he's going on and on, he's quoting Mishalom and Psukim and Gemara, he's like, no, it's fire, and brimstone, it's excitement, there's crowds. At a certain point, the Belzer Rebbe cuts him off. I'm going to quote for you word for word, translated from Yiddish, what the Belzer Rebbe is. He says, no, you don't have. Fine, you're talking for a couple hours. You have enough to say. Kasha Mashiach Yabo Yudim Yasu Tshuva. Says when the Mashiach comes, then the Jews will do Tshuva. Achshav Yikash Yudim Yabu Zeh. Now the main thing that we have to worry about is for Jews to love one another. You have to love every other Yid. Even the Yid that's the worst, and then his nefesh, he's the lowest, biggest, Manua, you have to love him as your own self. Unite all the hearts. To distance ourselves from everything that can lead to the division of hearts, which sometimes often trying to tell people do this, do that, and I don't. ובזה תלויה ישועתם של ישראל ביצרם. Since that is the only thing that the salvation of the Jewish people in a time like now, Sarah, is dependent on. Avat Yisrael, Avat Yisrael, Avat Yisrael. The bottom line is like the title you have on the top of your page. The Bezrat Hashem is a place of sin, of hatred, of fear, of division amongst Jews, and of galus, which should be zocher, to have true avat chinam, to internalize the messages of the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, to have actus, to have unity, and then to be zocher in a place of galus, to the Gula Shlema, Hera,
Thank you, Rabbi, for the great share. I guess the following is in Margaret, we're going to finish and we'll dive in here. So if anyone